Hi, I'm Mike Gilliam, and welcome to a CUNY TV virtual town hall, The Reopening and Mental Health. We're now getting very close to the fall of 2021, almost 18 months into the COVID-19 pandemic that is yet to fully go away. With a variant of the virus hitting some mostly unvaccinated communities hard, it's not clear when the pandemic will officially end. But there are bright signs. Here in New York, the city is fully open after meeting a vaccine target on June 15th. And this is true of most of the states in the country. But with the variant still driving up case numbers, the city stepped up its push for vaccinations by requiring all city workers to get vaccinated or be tested weekly. Against that backdrop, one of the biggest shifts in the US will be students returning to class. This time last year, teachers and students were scrambling to adapt to a new semester of online learning as the virus overtook the country and our lives. A year later, we're getting back to where we were with in-person classes, face-to-face learning, and students socializing with one another again. As normalcy returns, we have to ask, how has this long and unprecedented event affected our mental health? Mine, yours, your children's teachers. And in particular, how has it affected students who, like many of us, had their lives turned upside down? What are the short and long-term impacts, in particular on college-aged people? Here to go over all of this are Ryan Kamier, University Director of Mental Health and Wellness here at CUNY, John McPhee, Executive Director of the JED Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to the mental health of students and young people, and Mace Ahmad, a professor at Pima Community College in Arizona, and author of a recent article highlighting the mental health needs for college students. Welcome to you all. Ryan, you first. What trends have you seen in regards to mental health and the reopening of society?
We've seen a lot of trends in terms of mental health movement over the past year. And as we focus on reopening and sort of returning back to some semblance of normalcy, despite the fact that things look very different in many cases right now, I would say the biggest trends we're seeing is anxiety about what reopening looks like, what things are going to be happening, especially with the variants in the news and with vaccination requirements, changing mask mandates. There's a lot of information coming at everybody right now, and I think people are facing a lot of anxiety about that. We've all spent a lot of time at home. We've all spent a lot of time evaluating and keeping ourselves safe. And now we're being asked to come back into the community to join our students and our colleagues, and it is really creating a sense of anxiety for people. And I would say this relates both to the employees and city workers are going through this as a recent New York City mandate has happened. CUNY employees are working through some of these issues, as well as our students and what it means to be a student right now and how it will be different going forward.
As Ryan said, we've been through a lot, and teens and young adults have been through a lot, right? And this includes uncertainty and anxiety, and loss and grief, academic setbacks, financial impacts. And one key thing for us all to keep in mind, of course, is that the impacts have not been equitable. Different communities, different people, different families have experienced, these traumas to different degrees. And so what we're seeing is the anxiety that Ryan talked about, and a lot of work by schools around planning for students to come back, right? And putting in systems to be able to notice those who might be struggling and get them care quickly, right? For some students, actually, being remote wasn't difficult. In some ways, it was easier for them. Those that experience anxiety or may have been experiencing some kind of bullying or microaggressions, et cetera. There's a fair amount of students that actually, did okay remotely and are anxious about coming back, right? So I guess my point in saying that is to just make sure that we're not making blanket assumptions.
Mace, part of what you have written about has been support and being able to support students, right?
I want to echo what my colleague said, that we are going to see more of the anxieties and more of the struggles, and also it's important not to paint everyone with the same brush. And it's also important to remember that with young people, students that were coming to our institutions way before the pandemic, they were struggling with mental health. It was documented that JET Foundation, Active Minds, NAMI, the American College Health Association, the World Health Organization, we knew there were data from 2019, 2018 saying that young people were coming with anxiety and depression, and something like over 50%, across genders. And undoubtedly, the pandemic has amplified due to the isolation, due to the uncertainty, and the uncertainty is ongoing, I may add, because of the Delta variant, the next variant, the next variant. So it's important to keep that in mind and to also understand that it took us a while to establish a routine of being at home, of doing the online, and now what we are doing, we're going to break that routine. That's another stress on the brain that we need to account for. What can we do as faculty members, as staff, as human beings to welcome our students into our institutions? Initially, I was talking about what can faculty do because of their close proximity to students. And that's really important. And at the same time, this has to be an institution-wide. Mental health is not just a counselor issue. It's not a faculty issue. It's a society and it's a human rights issue. So we have to look at it as a top-down, bottom-up, really holistic approach. And I would even say that we have to take a preventative approach, not wait for a crisis to happen, but rather anticipate. We have the data that tells us things are going to be tough, and plan.
Now, we were kind of rolling along, and suddenly we hit the speed bump when the CDC said, hey, people who are vaccinated will also need to wear masks indoors. Is that something that is going to, in a sense, affect the mental health of people? Is that going to make them more apprehensive now that suddenly we're going backwards to where we've been before? What do you think about that, Ryan?
Anytime the CDC makes a recommendation, that's sort of a broad scale recommendation, it creates a sense of panic in a sense, because there's so much change that happens when recommendations are changing, and when it feels like things are more uncertain, especially from the public health officials at the top leading the fight against this pandemic. So I think it's only natural that anytime things occur at that level, there's going to be a sense of anxiety. But I also think there's a certain amount of frustration that's coming from folks about changes and mixed messaging, and people who are vaccinated and people who are not vaccinated, and the conversations that people are having. So it's a very complicated mental health picture, and it's again, to sort of echo what John and Mace have said, it's not one size fits all, and there's not anything specific that we can do to help each and every person. And I think that makes it more important for there to be a variety of tools that we are using, anticipating that this anxiety and trauma and isolation that we've all been living through will continue for some time. And we really are a community, and how can we help one another in that community, and also as professionals. I think it's really important that we keep the larger picture in mind of the struggles that will continue going forward.
John, whenever I talk to people about returning to their jobs or to school, that sort of thing, one of the things they say is that I've been away so long, I just don't know, it doesn't feel right to me. Is that normal for people to feel that way, to have that apprehension?
Yes. Yeah, for the reasons stated, as May said, we established patterns, and Now we're gonna make a change. So to be apprehensive and uncertain about it absolutely is a normal response. And so anyone who's feeling that way, shouldn't be tough on themselves about it, right? It's a perfectly normal human reaction for us to be apprehensive. That's why it's so important that when we think about going back to school, that this idea of a community-based approach, which has been stated, that supporting our mental health does not just belong to the incredible behavioral health care workers at schools and in our community who are doing great work. It has to belong to all of us. And we all need to see ourselves as part of a community where we're supporting our own mental health and the mental health of others, right? Sort of like a no wrong door or no wrong person approach, because we don't know who a student might feel comfortable reaching out to or expressing concern or about themselves or about a friend. And we don't know who might be in a position to notice that someone else is struggling or to have that gut feeling that someone is struggling. And I think that this experience with the pandemic gives us a new opportunity because we've all experienced mental health. We've all, challenges, distress, anxiety. So we have more freedom to talk about it and to acknowledge it and to start conversations about it. And I'm hopeful that that's one of the silver linings that will come from this, right? And so when we're returning to work, as you said in your question, or we're returning to school, that we can openly talk to each other about, like, this isn't easy. I'm nervous. I'm anxious about this. And then the person you're with will express the same. And that's mutually supportive. That's protective, right? If we can take this opportunity to get to that kind of community support, because it takes a village.
Mace, how do you knock down the stigma that is raised when you use the term mental health?
One way to destigmatize it is to normalize talking about it. Normalize talking about it, not so we could trivialize it, but so we could give permission to do something about it. So one of the things I've been talking with faculty members, I've written about, is this notion of bearing witness. So we don't need to be therapists or psychiatrists, or those are really important and they have their place. But we as faculty members, when you bear witness, you are recognizing the truth of something and you are advocating for it. So for a long time, what I've done is I have a mental health day. It's in my schedule. Students take the day off. They learn about mental health, why we have mental illness, what can we do about it. But I also share my story. Not to dump it on the students. I share it in a way to say, this happens to all of us. Another thing I do is I invite, week number 1, I invite someone from the counseling and therapy center to come and talk about it. And then I ask questions. Well, what can I do if this happens? And we all, the students, myself, we program numbers in our phone. What happens if I wake up in the middle of the night and I have this profound anxiety? What number can I text? So in a way, when I say the preventative, we have to take it. We have to make it seamless how to seek that help.
John, in keeping with what Mace is telling us, are there some things that you would like to see professors and instructors do before they go back to school to help students?
First of all, they should prepare, and schools should prepare a plan for how they're going to support mental health. And this is actually a big part of what the JED Foundation does. The idea being that in order to create a mental health safety net, you have to plan it out. You need a written plan for what you're going to do, and it needs to be comprehensive. And so faculty members can have that plan, and it should include exactly the kinds of things that Mays is talking about. Make sure that students know where and how to get help on that particular campus, right? Connect with Ryan and his team, and so that you really know and you understand and have those kinds of open conversations. a lot of the messaging that's directed to teens and young adults around mental health is talk to a caring and trusted adult if you're concerned about yourself or a friend, right? And so by Mays telling her story to her students, right, she's saying, I get it, and I'm here, right? And she becomes part of that network and that mental health safety net that can connect students to care and to Ryan and his team.
Mhm. Ryan, from your end of this, what are you guys doing to be welcoming of students who might have some concerns, might have some apprehension about returning to the classroom?
We've spent a lot of time and effort, and thankfully we have the financial resources thanks to some wonderfully government passed funding bills to support mental health, and from the federal to the state to the city here, and we are actively working towards providing additional safety nets in the form of technology and in the form of trying to create additional mental health counseling spaces, and trying to maintain some of our telehealth footprint that we've had over the past year and a half, because some students respond very positively towards that. So one thing we're learning is how to be more flexible, as I think everyone has during the last year and a half, and how can we place the groundwork and have our amazing counseling staff in place and ready to go, but also how can we provide services and supports outside of those areas, whether it's a service where you can text 24/7 to get support, whether it's working with organizations to train our faculty and staff and how best to respond, working with the JED Foundation, for example. A couple of our campuses are doing that right now to make a foundational plan. Working with some alternatives to individual and group therapy, like mindfulness courses, things like that. So I think that the more options we're able to offer students, the better we are able to handle their concerns and questions coming in.
Mason, looking at some of the things that you have written, one of the things that stuck out to me was the fact that a student might be actually having mental health issues, but not know it. They might say, well, I just studied all of this information, and then when I got ready to take the exam, I didn't know a single thing. I'm stupid. I've lost my ability to study here. Is that a common thing? And how does that work? And how do you overcome that?
It's a human nature. You study, you work really hard, and then you fail. And most students, especially those who are first generation, especially those who are on the margins, will take a deficit model. It must be me. I must be stupid. I must be this. I must be. And I did research with students where I developed those micro sessions. They're called Hello Brain. We learn about the brain and what happens. And if we want students or anyone to self-regulate, it has to start with the awareness. What triggers me, what happens, and so on. And it was amazing to see how students say, I didn't know this. I didn't know this was physiology. I didn't know that I was walking around with this fight or flight. And what I saw happen during the past year and a half is a lot of schools responded to this trauma-informed education, trauma-informed, and it was wonderful, and it's long overdue. What I haven't seen is who's educating the students, who's letting the students that know that the response that you are having is a typical physiological response. It says nothing about your intelligence or your capability or your work ethics or this and that. So one of the plans as a holistic approach is to educate the students about their neurobiology, their physiology, just what happens when we are stuck in that fight or flight. This is not so we could pathologize, but so we could help them use the tools that they have, that their body is working to help them. and also I think the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it is intimately connected with this right here, because a lot of times it's people just walk away. They think it's them, they're embarrassed, there's stigma, and then they just walk away. And those are the people that oftentimes they come from lower socioeconomic background, they're first generation. And so we have to see that things are very interconnected, and have a plan that pulls in all those units to help the students and to help the faculty.
John, would you like to add to that?
On the issue of equity, when coming back to building a comprehensive plan or a mental health safety net, I talked about the importance of having a written plan. It's also critical that that plan is developed through the lens of what we call equitable implementation, right? So really looking at who was the school designed for? Who was it not designed for? Who attends the school? And who might be facing incremental challenges or incremental stressors on top of the stressors that we talked about at the beginning that all students are. Some students are facing more. And we have to plan for that. And data is very important, right? So really looking at the student body, surveying students, understanding what their experiences are. I'll give you an example. We survey students in the schools that we work with at the JED Foundation. And so at the high school level in particular, we're helping schools understand that large percentages of their Asian students, larger than they ever imagined, are experiencing bias incidents around coronavirus. And right now, and those students are distressed about it, right? And so by doing the surveys, by collecting the data, you can understand what students are experiencing and you can respond to it. And I think that that's just a really important part of this work of creating a mental health safety net.
That's a very good point, because that's something that another student might not even think about, that you have a fellow student who doesn't really want to come back because they're concerned about the biases that they might face. We're almost out of time now, but I'd like to ask each of you to just briefly tell me what your message is to the student at this point. Let me start with you, Ryan.
We are all in this together. So I think it's important that students realize that they can reach out to any trusted person, as John spoke about earlier. We are trying to create an atmosphere that helps students to realize that there's help all around them, and whether it's not in the counseling office, whether it's in athletics, or whether it's in food services, or whether it's in disability services, anything that you can do, there really is a place where people will listen and will try to get you and yours connected to the services that you need.
Mace, briefly, what would your message to students be?
Well, so I would say that you are literally the future of our humanity, and that your struggles are real. We see them, they matter, and so are your resilience. You have brilliance and power and wonderful things to contribute to this journey from this uncertain, perhaps painful and disenchanted present to a future that is more equitable and beautiful. And I would end with that, what the Persian poet Rumi says, that you're not a drop in the ocean, you're the entire ocean in a drop. And so there are a lot of people that are rooting for you. They're supporting you. They're taking this journey with you. They're walking with you, behind you, with you. That's what I'd say.
To have support. John, let me have you wrap it up there. What would your message to students be?
Well, I would say that students, are from an extraordinary generation. Their data shows they're more accepting than any previous generation. They want to help each other. They want to make the world a better place. They're talking about mental health more than previous generations. All of us can take a lesson right now from Simone Biles and from Naomi Osaka about the fact that, you know, we all can struggle, we all will, and it's okay. It's part of the human condition, and the importance of being there for others when that happens, and connecting to others when it's happening to you.
Yeah, I think part of the message that we have to give our young people is that it's okay to struggle, because we've all struggled through what we've been through over the last 18 months. We're gonna have to leave it right there. I want to thank our guests for all of the insight. The university's Director of Mental Health and Wellness here at CUNY, Ryan Kmeyer, the Executive Director of the JED Foundation, John McPhee, and a professor at Pima Community College in Arizona, Mace Ahmad. Thank you all. And I would like to thank you all for watching our virtual town hall, The Reopening and Mental Health. I'm Mike Gilliam. For all of us here at CUNY TV, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.